tonight. Thanks for joining us. I wanted to briefly introduce my partner, Frank Dill. Frank and I were attracted to each other. We both met each other over 7 years ago on Match.com, probably because we both listed lead accredited professional in our dating profiles. Frank and I have a little bit of a different background. So he is a residential architect and has even done a net zero retrofit in addition in Arlington, Massachusetts. But I come from a policy background, so I'm a total green building policy nerd.
And for us, a hot date is a green building tour or a passive house conference.
So tonight for our toast, I'd just like to toast to meeting new people in our green building community. Hear, hear. We have a really exciting presentation tonight about a beautiful home. In 2019, after working on design and construction of really large commercial projects all throughout the United States, Alessandro Ronfini decided to start his own firm, Demo Architects, with his business partner, Daniel Kidd. And Demo works to implement high-tech and prefabricated solutions in both commercial and residential projects with a real focus on sustainability and, of course, passive house. Alessandro also is a new dad, so welcome to Passive House Accelerator tonight, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. And yes, I'm a new dad. My daughter is sleeping somewhere upstairs, so you might hear her or some sound machine or something like that time by time. Yeah, thank you so much. So let me share the screen and I'll start with the presentation and talk a little bit about myself, a company, and what we do. So today I'm here to present the Olive Passive House. This is one of the first projects that we as Demo Architects completed. This is also my own house, my second home in upstate New York, actually. It's a pretty small house, approximately 1,500 square feet interior area, which has been certified passive house this past July. So I wanted to mention a little bit where I'm coming from and my expertise or my experience, just to help. I guess it will help a little bit explain why I'm going to focus on certain details and certain aspects of the project. So grew up in Italy, studied in Venice, and then moved first to Denmark to work for Bjarke Ingels Group. And then with that company, I moved to New York to continue working on via West 57, a large project in New York City. While working on that project, I decided to actually change my career and started working for a curtain wall company, Enclose. And for 5 years, I worked on really large buildings, complete opposite of this, no lumber whatsoever, just glass and aluminum and some steel here and there. So working on really detailed items on figuring out exactly how condensation can be resolved and how manufacturing can be done offsite, etc., etc. So a lot of really technical expertise that in 2019, when I decided to join forces with Daniel Kidd, he's also in this call, came pretty helpful to actually accomplish some of the project and to actually show that despite being a young office, we had the knowledge and the ability to actually build things. So Demo Architects, we have a lot of projects for the most part, except for my house and another house, they're in construction because, as all of you are architects know, it takes a lot of time to actually build a portfolio of build projects. And having started in 2019, definitely 2 years are not enough. But we're working on a lot of interesting projects and a lot of passive houses right now. So for the most part, in upstate New York. So it's very exciting. Future looks bright so far. So this house. So in 2017, my wife and I decided to start looking for a land and build a house. The idea was that, well, we couldn't afford an apartment in New York City or nothing that bigger than a studio. So we're like, why not looking for land, building something bigger? It's an investment. It's going to be a fun project. And maybe one day we'll move there. So we looked for through a million land, and then finally we saw this beautiful piece of property, which of course was twice our budget. But we fell in love with it and we decided, oh, okay, let's just buy it and see what we can do with it. And this, just to orient yourself a little bit, this is not really a view that I get most of the time. This is more like from the neighbor, because my house is on this side, so I don't really see the mountain, but I actually have a south exposure and a view of the pond. So after camping on the property for quite some time, and being Italian, I cannot not have my mocha, even on a campsite. We finally decided where to put the house, and we finally conceived an idea for the house. So this is the final product, and I kind of want to step back a little bit and talk about how we got here. So the idea was to have like a really basic house, really simple, the kind of house that a kid will draw, like the one on the right, or that an artist that tries to draw as a kid, like Paul Klee, would draw. So really basic element, vertical walls and a pitched roof. Of course, this is nothing new. A lot of architects these days, especially, are trying to use this archetype of a house for new construction. For example, the Vitra house by Herzog & de Meuron. The idea, however, was to take this volume and, in a way, like similar to a geode, or similar to the way that a beaver kind of carves in a very interesting way the exterior of a tree to reveal its warmer interior. We decided to carve the volume. Once again, nothing new. I haven't invented anything. I know that. Stephen Hall is definitely a master in that, and really an architect I really like, and both these buildings in a way have something very similar to what we've been trying to do with the olive passive house. So the idea for these carvings on the building was to actually justify them in a way that was relating the building to the site, and also in a way that could organize the interior and the exterior space. So the house is oriented 30 degrees southeast. It's kind of like the maximum angle we could put it at in order to still get some view of the pond and not miss on the sun exposure towards the south. At the same time, on the south here, there's the only neighbor is in sight. Of course, they have a view of the pond there. So we kind of wanted to maintain some privacy, still like very far, but nonetheless, we wanted to maintain some privacy and not really point the view directly onto the neighbor house. So what we decided to do is to carve out these wedge shape out of the house, out of this very simple volume at an angle of 23 degrees from the actual axis of the house, in order to orient the view directly onto the pond, so that this interior space that is actually sitting on that side of the house can look straight out onto the water without any without seeing the neighbor and without the neighbor seeing inside the house. What that translates to is this angle, this 23-degree angle, again, that because of this cutout onto the south volume creates this odd shape onto the volume itself, with a big glass window that again looks over to the pond. This cutout also kind of continues underneath here, creating a covered porch on the south side, which is perfect for dining, for working, etc. And then it continues on the east side with an outdoor shower and the condenser unit. Upstairs and at the entrance, this cutout also creates a little recess for a cover entrance, and then this angle orients the stairs, mechanical room, and this loft upstairs that looks down onto the double height living room space. The idea of this geode, or the idea of a beaver chewing through a trunk, is kind of what we try to express with the house. The house is this very well protected shed, this black steel, very simple shape. And then every time we carved out an opening, we revealed the warmth of the interior through the use of wood as a siding material. So the result, as you can see, again, very simple volume, and then every time we cut out whether it's the entrance, balconies, the porch, etc., it reveals a very warm interior. So now onto the construction. So the construction of this house from day one, and probably because of I came from the curtain wall industry, I wanted to use a prefabricated technique. So the house is actually a panelized system. I talked with the usual names in the industry, Benson Wood, EcoCore, et cetera. And then eventually I found out a small company in Kingston, Threshold Builders. They had just started building panels with TGI outriggers, and then spec cellulose, building passive houses. They've only, unfortunately, after this house, because of pandemic and the true partner of this company took different paths and they're no longer in business. But they did a great job in building these panels in the factory. I'm going to talk about exactly how they're detailed. So you can see, sorry. So all the panels were built, and then over the span of a couple of months, and then the construction, for the most part, for all the ground floor, everything, and the second floor, everything except the roof was installed in a span of 3 days. So this is a camera that I set on site, so you can see setting of the panels. It's not going very smooth, but it's happening. So all the panels, there we go, second day. Again, all the panels were prefabricated in Kingston, which is roughly 25 minutes drive from the project site. So really close by, not a lot of travel distance. So built locally in a way. And there you see the big beam over the porch on this side. So onto the details of the construction of these panels. So the panels are pretty standard. There's a lot of panels very similar to this. They are built with 2x4 interior 2x4 structural framing, zipboard as an interior air barrier. That's to the use of zipboard. I know in the passive house community is a little controversial. In this case, it was actually I think it was a good way of resolving the detail because it's actually both a sheathing as an interior air barrier. So helps a lot with avoiding any risk of condensation on the exterior or in the sandwich of the insulation, and as a sheathing material. So there's no actual extra material that needs to be added on top of it. So it was cost saving and performance that drove that decision. TGI outriggers. This house is kind of pushing the limit of how small a house can be and still be certified passive house. This is again just short of 1,500 square feet interior area. So the walls are really thick, are 16 inches of dense packed cellulose. It's driven both by the performance and by the risk of condensation. So both things were in place here. And then on the outside, the Solitex Mento Plus taped all edges, and then 2 layers of furring strips for the rain screen. The siding is a standing seam metal roof on most of the exposed surfaces, and then everywhere where the house is protected is a Siberian larch. The roof, for the roof, also because of the R value that we had to hit, we decided to actually put exterior insulation in this case. So just not to oversize the joist on the interior and create additional structure that was unnecessary. So the rafters are 12 inches I-joist with dense packed cellulose, and then on the exterior, again, a zipboard as our interior air barrier. So there's no the dense packed cellulose. One thing that I wanted to highlight also with this picture is actually not contained by your typical Intello or any interior air barrier. So it's allowed to actually dry to the interior. And once again, the zipboard is acting as the interior air barrier and as sheathing. And then on the exterior, EPS, and then on top of that, again, Solitex, in this case, Solitex UM, which is a membrane with a mesh on top of it, so you can apply the the metal roofing directly on top of that and maintain some circulation underneath. The slab finally, slab R32, 42, sorry. Slab was all prefab EPS. So I think from easy frame, easy core, something like that. So whole pre-design was as simple as setting up construction with Legos to put it all together, secure it in place, and then prep it for the concrete pour. The windows, so another, of course, important component on the facade. So of course, the main element in the house is this big double height space with this big curtain wall. The curtain wall is a stick-built wood aluminum curtain wall, so with wood mullions and pressure cap aluminum on the exterior. The windows are all aluminum-clad pine windows from Batimet from Germany. These windows show a couple of things. This picture here show a couple of things that unfortunately happened. So the manufacturing was pretty good, but there were definitely some problem in some of the gaskets and how they were installed. So we had to fix that on site. But nonetheless, the quality of the window, and I want to point out that it's really hard to find at a decent price a welded face aluminum window, and all the details in this were really great. So some other pictures of the curtain wall, just to show how it worked. The curtain wall was over designed in terms of the depth of the mullion, just to contain the thickness of the wall more than just the structural load. So the horizontal member, the transom, they're more than just a transom. They don't only support the glass, but they kind of become a little seat at the bottom and a shelf on the upper level. Some details here also for the curtain wall system. So this is the typical curtain wall, and then this detail, this is something that I spent a lot of time detailing. So because of this big extent of glass facing south, we of course wanted to protected from excessive solar heat gain. So there are some shades that are hidden behind the siding in there. The shades are staggered. I look for an hour finding a picture of them, and even though I'm not at the house, it's too cold to actually run them now. But they're staggered. They all work. I promise. They're all automated. So they're not. They don't have a sensor, but you can control them remotely with the remote control, and they're completely invisible from the exterior. So if I go back here, they're hidden behind here. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and again, completely invisible from the interior and exterior when they're not dropped down. So construction of the house, everything went relatively smooth until March 2020, when of course the pandemic hit, and when there was a stop work order for most construction or non-essential construction in New York. So at this point, that's a picture from then. So the interiors were kind of all wired and all mechanical systems in place, but of course no finish on the exterior. We barely had started a roofing on the opposite side, but not completed. So at that point, it was kind of like a lot of stress, but at the same time a very fun experience. We just asked friends to help, and my wife and I took more work that we were supposed to. We were already planning to do some of the interior finishes ourselves, but we decided to do a lot more. So we did all the kitchen, we did the entire wood siding of the house ourselves. We did the floors. So the siding was actually a fun experience. I have not really done a lot of woodwork, a few things, a few millwork, fun projects here and there, but installing siding for an entire house is a different project, a little bit of an undertaking. Had to rent tools like this guy here, but at the end of the day, it was fun. It was a great experience. As an architect, I learned a lot by doing things, how to detail connections, how to well, what to expect and what not to expect in terms of tolerances, in terms of precisions of the execution of the details. So it was, even though it took much longer than anticipated and a lot more work and stress, it was definitely a fun experience and a big learning experience. The floors, please don't ever do floors yourself, or you're gonna getting very close to divorce. The stairs, I did those as well. Then we did all the casing for the windows. So this is all red oak. Luckily, the couch was also very late, so we had all of the living room for ourselves to set up shop and set all of these boxes. We built them on the floor and then installed them onto the windows. Very proud of those. So that was a fun project. So here's the house, completed house. So the house actually won at the latest FuseCon the award for best project by a young professional. I was 35 at the time of when I started the project, but really the professional, and I have to credit him, is Owen O'Connor. He was the builder and the fuse rater, and he was 34 when we started the project, so under 35. So the house, again, the house is now is finally complete. There's still a few things that we're working on, some furniture missing here and there, but overall we're really happy with the result. It's been great as an architect to have a project that you complete, that you don't have to ask a client to visit with the other potential client. Is an incredible value, and this has been very successful in getting our company new projects. On the interior, some fun things. This table, something that my wife and I designed, and the two legs here, there was an unfortunate mistake. One of the builder actually cut the ridge beam too short, or one of the parts of the ridge beam too short. So we had a 20-foot ridge beam. That was an expensive mistake for the builder, but also something they didn't want to bring back home. And so we just cut it in parts and gave it to a friend who's a mill worker, and they used it to build the legs of this table. And we still have some pieces that we're going to build more furniture with. More views of the house, of the interior. So this big curtain wall, as you can see, points the view really towards the pond on the side. On the interior, kitchen cabinet. This is the big double height space, and then upstairs with the mini split unit. And we're going to talk about mechanical system in a second. And then the interior, the bathrooms. We even though the house is modern, we didn't want to have super modern interiors, and more and more we're buying more and more furniture from auctions, from secondhand stores, etc., etc. This sink, for example, we built kind of the whole bathroom around it. That was the first thing. We went to Zabrowski in Kingston. If anybody has been to Kingston knows that place. It's an architectural salvage place and really like a labyrinth. So we found this sink from the 50s from American Standard, and then we built everything around it. Ordered these faucets from Italy. The tiles are really standard dull tile, but it's a really bright and very colorful bathroom that we really love. And then the other bathroom, definitely more calm in terms of colors, but also really modern, but not excessive. More of the interior with the stair that we did. You see that there's one, if you're an architect, you know that there's one too many steps here without a handrail. We are planning to build something there, but it's not there yet. Luckily, the inspector didn't raise any question there. So mechanical systems. So the house, of course, we're using ERV system. In this case, it's a Zender Comfware 350. Here are the mechanical drawings, but it's all pretty straightforward. Intake in the bathrooms, mechanical rooms, and exhaust in the living spaces. Because of this double high space and because of the construction system, we actually have the supply and the return under the ceiling of the kitchen, which is a little far. That's one of the lessons learned, and I'm gonna talk about that too. It's a little far to cover the entire space, so we've had to actually add a ceiling fan to take care of that. In terms of heating and cooling, the house, well, for cooling, it's just one floor mounted, actually, Mitsubishi mini split heat pump. It's a 9 kBTU, so the smallest you can get, and still over dimension for the system. For heating, though, we also have an additional post heater, so it's the Stel Pro, that warms the ERV supply air to 67, 68 degrees, which is 4 or 5 degrees on average more than what it will come out of the ERV naturally, and that helps a lot, actually, keeping some of the rooms, especially the ones on the east and the north, a little warmer in the winter. For domestic hot water, that's another thing. So this is a second home, remember? So, and it's pretty narrow. So after a lot of debate, I decided to go with a tankless electric water heater because, again, I'm not using the water all the time, mostly on weekends, and then sometimes I'm there for a whole week. And I think it was, even though there's a higher load, of course, when you're calling for some hot water, on the long term, this is actually going to be less expensive than even a heat pump water heater, because there's no tank that needs to be constantly filled and kept warm. Range hood, I'm going to talk later about that. We have a recirculating fan, very standard for under CFM. Probably not the best solution, but it works enough for this house. So after the work was finally completed, sometimes in May, we managed to test the house to achieve the certification. So we did the blower door test. The results were great. So air changes per hour, 50 Pascal, 0.27 with a target of 0.6, of course. So really a very airtight house, especially considering how small it is. Here's some data for the nerds in the call, the ones that are interested in all the data. We can go back to this and take a look in detail if you have questions. But basically, already from day one, we designed the house with the goal to achieve FUSE 2018 certification, and we hit all the targets. The only I added a note. I don't know if somebody from FUSE is here, but there was a lot of debate with FUSE about the offsite renewable energy production. So I needed to add 2,800 kilowatt hour of that. And FUSE, I don't even know if they have changed the standard because of how stubborn I was. But their requirement for using a community farm, a solar community farm, rather than installing solar on site, is to actually purchase those panels. And instead, I had a contract for 20 years to use those panels, which is a lease versus a purchase. And after a lot of back and forth, that finally FUSE approved this method, and currently that produces almost half of what is needed for my house. So these are the data, and I wanted to point out some data here. For example, the total source energy, 13,000 kilowatt hour year. So because it's my house, I can see the bills. It's a second home, but I nonetheless I wanted to show some numbers and show some the energy consumption of the house, because even though I'm not here all the time, and I would say probably approximately 20% of the time the house is used. The temperature, so heating and cooling, again, despite the fact that there's no human load in the house, and no windows are open, but also no shades that are dropped down in the summertime, the temperature was kept for the past year. The house finally had all the mechanical systems already last winter, so it's been a year of a running house. So temperature kept at a minimum 65 in the winter and a maximum 74 in the summertime, and you can see here the consumption. So as on 2021, the actual consumption was just shy of 7,000 kilowatt hour with an estimated of 13,000. Half of that, of 46% of that, was actually produced with offsite solar production. So very happy with the result. Of course, I wasn't expecting to hit 13,000 because it's second home, but nonetheless, being half of that, it's a very good result, I think. Another thing that, of course, we all value, hopefully, in passive house is air quality. So I got myself a little aware. Not the best tool, of course, on the market is maybe not the professional tool, and it's kind of annoying how it cannot go back in time and extract the data only a month. But I look at this past month, since I was here the entire month, and extracted week by week for the 4 weeks of December the data from the house. So as you can see, this is the overall score, pretty high from 91, minimum 91, top of 97. Of course, there are always some peaks and some low. For example, this 70 might have been me cooking a steak or something like that. There such small things can actually affect dramatically the value on the result on these results. So, for example, if we look at the PM 2.5, there's a lot of peaks here and there, not a lot of lows, and these the TVOCs and the CO2, for the most part, these are dependent on yes, human activity in the house. So cooking, even if I turn on a candle, that affects actually the interior quality, which is really impressive how little it takes to change the air inside the house. Vacuuming is also something that lifts a lot of dust, even though a lot is collected. A lot of it's lifted just because of the fan running. And then the temperature, also this is pretty good. The median temperature oscillates a little bit, of course, but that also depends on where the sensor is located. The data that definitely is not all green is the humidity. So on average, the house is dry in the winter, and the reason for that is mostly because of course, well, it's dry outside, and the house not always occupied, even though we're talking about a month where I was here, and an all air system to warm the house. So of course that dries also the air and creates some well, not problems, but slightly below ideal indoor humidity. So some of the problems and lesson learned. How am I doing with time? I have another couple minutes, probably. Going good.
Yeah, go for it, Alessandro.
Okay, perfect. So these are just, I mean, there's a million problems and there's a million things that I've learned in this house, and I like to point those out to clients and say, like, don't do it like that. That was a mistake. But a lot of those are small things, like I should have had a bigger overhang over my entrance, and I maybe should have thought of a way of warming up the concrete at the entrance, because it gets really slippery when it snows and the ice forms immediately on it. So a few things like that, design problems. In here, I really wanted to highlight the passive house related issues that I encounter. None of them is a big problem, and actually I'm on the way of solving all of them, I think. But one thing, it was definitely distributed temperature. So the ERV alone, even though it was tested, it was calibrated. Zender, a rep from Zender came here and calibrated the system. Nonetheless, there's definitely a difference in temperature that is noticeable between the rooms on the ground floor on the east side. The bathroom and the bedroom in here are definitely colder than the rest of the space, and in the living room, well, where we stay, we don't float in space, but of course on the ground floor, it's a little colder than upstairs. If you go on the loft, you feel definitely a difference in temperature. The reason being that the heating system, for the most part, is upstairs. So the mini split is here, even though this is set to only blow down at the floor level. still there's not enough air, there's not enough circulation to actually warm the rooms on this side, and sometimes again the lower part of this floor. Of course, heat tends to go to the top. But this is never a problem in the summertime. The summertime, the whole house has exactly the same temperature. It's only something that happens in the wintertime. So the solution, there's two solutions that I'm actually trying to install if I can get this equipment, because as you know, supply is a problem everywhere. So we're going to install a little electric radiator in this room, 500 watt, probably going to be set at the minimum temperature, and it has a built-in thermostat, so it's going to turn itself off when we get to 72 degrees to keep this area warm. This really is only needed, I would say, from early December to probably late February, so for 3 months. And then this is a plug-in, so potentially we can even just unplug it and put it in a closet, but it's really minimal, so it's probably just going to stay under the window. So this is something we actually had a tower warmer in the bathroom that was supposed to do the work of this, and then for budget reason and because of with the pandemic, there were a lot of problems with the electrician suddenly having a lot of other jobs more interested in this. We reduced it, we cut it out, and that was a mistake. We should have kept another source of heat in that area, because again, being on the northeast, it's definitely colder than the rest of the space. And the window being under the porch doesn't get as much solar heat gain. In this area here, instead, there was a very dumb mistake, and we use a fan in other houses with double height. So I don't know why, well, I know why I didn't put it, because I didn't want to see it, but that was a big mistake. And of course, we're going to put one now, and found a nice model, which is actually not this one. So it's here waiting for the electrician to install it. Hopefully that's going to happen soon. Right now, I know that this is going to work, because right now I have a very simple tower fan that I put it on the loft, and that's enough to actually create this air circulation to bring that warm air from the heat pump in the entirety of the space, and so that the median temperature is 70 degrees, and there are no problems. Another not an issue, but something that could be improved, and something that definitely I'm trying to do different in the next projects, is the range hood. So I have a very simple Elica recirculating range hood from the CFM. So it basically, this is cut out, but it's under here, sucks the air, and then there's a little exhaust at the top, so it just recirculates the air like that. Whenever I cook something like a steak or anything that is smelly or even humid, even cooking a pasta, I turn the ERV booster on. So the Zender has a booster that increases the capacity, increases the fan speed, so more air is extracted and more air is brought into the house. While this helps in keeping the smell low and kind of like cleans the air pretty quickly after having cooked, still there's a lot of humidity, there's a lot of condensation. Again, if you're boiling some water here, condensation happening underneath, because the fan is not strong enough to pull it out, and those peak in pollutants that I talked about earlier. So next house, especially if it's a house where a family is supposed to live full time, probably a fan that exhausts to the exterior is a better solution. And I know that Dan agrees to that. So another thing is the humidity level. So that's another thing I talked about earlier. In the winter, the house is pretty dry. Now, the solution here for when I'm not at the house, well, I don't really have a solution, and I don't think it's a big problem. We're talking about less than 10, well, around 5 to 7% less humidity than comfort. When I'm at the house, the solution is very simple. We have a couple of these. It's actually a diffuser, but it works perfect as a humidifier that we run at night. At night is really when you're not taking showers, when you're not cooking, where the humidity actually drops, because all this happening is the heat pump is running and the hair is warmed and dried. So we just have a couple of these in the bedrooms, and that's enough to really feel the difference. I don't have a sensor for the humidity in the bedroom. I might move my Aware to the bedroom just to test it and see if this actually, beside what I feel, is also corresponding to an actual comfort level, much better than what I have right now. But it's a pretty simple and definitely very inexpensive solution. This is $100 versus a humidifier for the whole house that runs in the thousands of dollars. And that's it. I forgot to mention this little guy. This was a great help for during the construction of the project. Was our stress release Spanky, a little donkey living next door. Great friend, helped us really a lot during the construction, keeping our mental health in place.
Great stuff, Alexandro. Well, Zach, why don't we go to you first for sponsors and updates, and then we'll go to Bev and then go to questions. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that sounds great. Alessandro, that was fantastic. Thank you. And I know there are a good number of questions, so I'll try to keep it brief here. I want to give a big thank you to all the organizations that make the Passive House Accelerator happen. So thank you to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingui Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minitaire All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwool North America, Stillcorp, and Zola Windows. Thanks to our champion sponsors, Icon Windows and Doors, Proseco, and SIGA. And thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thanks also to our patron sponsors, Aero Aggregates, Aero Barrier, Brennan Insulation and Airtightness, Brooklyn Solar Works, Euroline Windows, Inotech Windows and Doors, Lamelux, Owens Corning, RDH Building Science, Sanderson Sustainable Design, and U.S. Engineered Wood T-Stud. So thank you, sponsors. On the podcast, on the Passive House podcast, we have an interview that Mary James and Ilka Cassidy conducted with Anne Vogt from Vand Architektura. She is a she's German trained, and is now a leading practitioner of Passive House in Spain. So please check out that episode on the podcast. By the way, we just surpassed the 100,000 download mark overnight. So that's pretty exciting on the podcast. It's cool that so many folks are listening. We also have the Passive House Accelerator magazine that just was released. It's focused on climate action from North America to South America, full of lots of great articles. Thank you to Mary James and the team for making that issue happen. Next week on Construction Tech, we have Tools for Tackling Embodied Carbon, presented by Steph Carlisle with the Carbon Leadership Forum. So yesterday we focused on embodied carbon in a project in Straw Bale, Passive House. On next Tuesday, we'll dive back into embodied carbon questions and the tools we can use to help with tracking and reducing that. Then on Wednesday, for the Global Passive House Showcase, we're joined by Emma Cubitt, Graham Cubitt, and Greg Leskin, and they'll be talking about the McQuestion Lofts Passive House Journey. So another great project showcase coming up next week. Then on Thursday, January 27th, we have episode 4 of the Building Performance Interactive. This is our UK and Ireland-based show, and this will be about super insulated, airtight passive homes with timber frame construction. And we'll be joined by Lee Broomhall of NBC Timber Frame and Adrian Williamson of WM Design and Architecture. So that's 9 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. GMT, 6 a.m. on the West Coast if you want to join me. I'm based in Seattle. It's fun to get up there. And then we have a big announcement. In February, we're going to be combining the Construction Tech and the Global Passive House Showcase Series under one umbrella, Passive House Live. And Passive House Live will be happening on Wednesdays every week. So this same time slot, 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. The first and third Wednesdays of every month will be a project showcase. And then the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month will be a dive into construction tech. So we're pretty excited about consolidating these audiences and being able to deliver really high quality programming to you all every week. And that's going to be happening on Wednesdays. So please join us for that in February. Thanks, everybody.
Great stuff, Zach. And we'll head over to Bev and Frank to kind of wrap the first hour, and then we'll dive into the questions in the after hour. So Bev and Frank, over to you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks. This is really fun. Alessandro, wonderful project. Gorgeous.
Thank you.
So final thought for everyone. We were talking about meeting new people. So everybody go out and try and meet someone new, bring someone new on Wednesdays coming up. So thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you again in the future.
Great stuff, Bev and Frank. And don't go too far. I know you're in the question queue, so stick around. Susan's going to kick us off, but as Bev just indicated, like every week, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, bring your friends. Next week's a busy week in the Accelerator. You heard all the events that are coming on. Looking forward to Thursday morning, making sure I get out of bed to enjoy the fourth episode. I've missed the third one. I slept in. I do admit it. So I've got some homework this weekend to get caught up. So thank you for joining us, Alexandro. Beautiful house, great photos. And Susan stole my question. I wanted to talk about shading, and she took it. So Susan, let's talk about shading.
Let's talk about shading. Yeah. And thank you, Alessandro. That was so well presented. I mean, I'm surprised I have questions because you were so thorough, but
Thank you.
you skipped over, you had to skip over a few things because you just couldn't cover it all. So yes, the shading, could you just talk a little bit more about your decisions about, which one you chose, and have you tried that in the winter, and is it remote? Can you work that like with an app? And Sean, add to the questions, please, on shading.
Yes, I saw that there's a lot of questions on the shades. I pulled a couple of pictures. Let me show you, just so I can prove that they actually work.
Not that I don't believe you. I just
so you can see them here. These are like just halfway down from the interior. When they're all up, you don't see them. They're completely invisible there. So they have a cable track on both sides. You can set the stop. So of course, this stops right above the door. I have another picture where you see them. See my wife and the shades be outside here. Oh, sorry. Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the shades are I don't remember the brand, honestly. It's nothing super fancy. They're pretty standard shades for a porch. They're just narrow. Generally these are much wider. So yeah, I don't remember. I don't recall.
And so they're
like,
exterior shades.
They're exterior shades. So they run on the exterior. Yes, designed for that. They're motorized. They don't have any app. I don't know if by now there is an app that can control them, but I just use simple remote control with up and down buttons when I need them. We really designed them in there because well, the land is pretty clear in front of the house, so that helps reducing the overheating in the summertime because of the orientation of that facade anyway. The reason why I use them, and you probably have seen the numbers in the consumption of energy in the summertime is really low. The air conditioning is barely running. If I keep the windows closed, it's there's barely any need for that. So I realized that they don't really do much in terms of reducing the heat gain. Sure, a little bit, especially because they're exterior shades. For the most part, I use them for comfort. If I'm like right now, I'm sitting here on my laptop and you can see the curtain wall behind me. If I try to do that in the summertime, I don't see a thing. The glare is just too much, so I can pull those down and yeah, be able to look at a screen here. But otherwise, yeah, they were expensive. I don't know if I would do it. I'm not doing it in another project that has a similar curtain wall because overall there was easily a $10,000 expense, and I don't think it's worth it.
That's really good to know.
But
Sean, was that all your questions?
It's a great detail. It's nice to show it, but as now that I know, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have.
Well, no, Susan, yeah, those are great questions. I mean, it's an interesting subject because we don't do a lot of exterior shading here in North America. We see it a lot in Europe. I always talk about, when we talk about the principles, it's high performance windows and then in brackets, exterior shading, because a lot of times it needs to be at least thought about or considered. So Alessandro, would you, instead of doing the shades, would you have kept either, you know, some type of device to just stop that sun from coming in, like either not a deck or an overhang to just kind of protrude out to help out with that? Or if you had to, you know, redesign that particular portion, which, you know, again, looks fabulous, don't want to take away from it, but what would you consider from a design for stopping that light to come through?
Well, now I kind of know, because the orientation again is basically southeast. So the solar gain is not that much. So you get a lot of solar gain more in the afternoon in the summer, right, than in the morning. So I would do an interior shade, which is much cheaper. Could be mounted in a different way, and I know it's not that energy efficient, but it's simplicity that makes it more popular than an exterior one. Also, interior shade, like for example, even though it's less efficient, being this a second home, I could just pull it down and leave it there. I don't pull down the shades when I leave the house, because I'm above 25 miles per hour wind, they will be ripped off, and there are gusts of wind here. So it's a scary situation, and yeah, I don't have a system that controls that automatically.
Great.
And were they local shades, or were they brought from Europe?
No, I think again, these are really basic. I mean, still they were pricey, but they're basic ones. I think they come from Florida. That's what I recall. Manufacturer over there. I'm sure most of the components are made in China, but they're assembled there.
Gotcha. Okay, great question, Susan. I think we got all three of yours. I'll let you be a hog to kick us off because they're good questions. Now we're over to Joshua.
Yeah, sorry. Well, we're just starting our venture of a very small passive house, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on some of the challenges of a small passive house. We're probably a third of your size, around 450 square feet. So, yeah, I was hoping to, hear some lessons learned.
Well, I know that there's some new standard, right, for small projects, but I don't know any of the detail of that. For Fuse 2018 to hit the energy consumption on a small house that has all the things that a house probably needs. I don't know if in 450 square feet you're going to have a big fridge or washer and dryer, things like that, but like hitting the target on a small square foot, because you cannot distribute that on a large surface, becomes really challenging. And since you cannot change the consumption of a fridge or again a water heater or your washer and dryer, you have to play on the heating and cooling load, and therefore increasing the insulation. And at a certain point, it's just not financially, it doesn't make any sense financially to have like a wall. I mean, already in my case, I'm really on the edge. I kind of wanted to have this as a passive house, but if I was working with the client that was like really conscious about the payback time for a construction, probably would have been a hard sell for a house this size. We work on a house that is 1,300 square feet. We design it as passive house. We did a quick cost benefit analysis and realized it doesn't make any sense doing these walls that are 75 or whatever it was, just to hit that standard. But I know there are some changes, but I haven't had any time to read the new changes on Fuse and the small buildings.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Joshua, I'll try to find some resources. I know 475 just put out a blog this week about ADU, so I'm just digging it up for you. Over to Bevan, and Frank had a question.
Yep, Frank, just a quick question. You mentioned keeping it at 65 degrees in the winter, even when you're not there. I just wondered, did you think about setting it back lower when you're gone for long periods?
Yes. Well, I'm generally not gone for long period, and the reason why I don't set it lower is because of the thermal mass of the concrete. So I have concrete floor. If I set it lower, that stays cold, and when I come back here, the floor is at 60 degrees, and there's no way that I can warm that up in a weekend or something like that. So it's a measure of comfort, I would say.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And oh, and we're over to Hans. See if he's still with us. Did he leave? He did, so we'll skip him and we'll go to Peter, Mr. P.H. Molnair.
Yeah, good evening. That was a really great project. I like the design, and just wondering if you ever heard of a big ass fan,
Yes.
or do you want a smaller fan?
Well, big ass fan, they also do some smaller fans.
Yeah, but it would help recirculate. It's a great project and good finding where the problems are and letting that be known too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't want to hide anything, yeah, there's definitely things that I should have done differently, and learning from that, and that's okay. Hopefully, I don't make the same mistakes in clients' projects. I mean, it's on one end, it's better to I guess make a mistake with someone else's money, but on the other end, for our reputation as an office, is good to show that we've learned our lesson and we're doing the right thing with someone else's money. But yeah, the fan, it's really just to mix the air. It's really just a big wooden spoon stirring the air so that we can get some of that hot air up there down here. So.
Yeah, I thought I saw that big ass fan in your specs there. So, and yeah, I think you're right. For managing the 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, will probably definitely help with just changing the airflow in that big space. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, appreciate you sharing your lessons learned. And again, I think your clients will appreciate that you've been in the trenches and that you know what's going on. And what's nice too is they can always come to your house and experience what you get to experience. So it's probably a show home for what you guys are doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It works great for that.
All right. So the next question, we're heading off to Andreas. Andreas, you still with us?
Yes, I am. Hi there. As you can tell from my accent, I'm German, and I grew up in Germany and went to architecture school. And when I came here, I realized, that all my floor plans had no closets. So I noticed that yours don't have any either. So question to you is, you just wear one set of clothes when you're there and then go home?
Yes, I have a washer and dryer, so I can do that. No, what is not shown in the plans or in the photos, because it's something that is actually in progress right now. We're building the storage for the most part as millwork, as kind of like armoires, if you want, in both in 2 of the bedrooms. One of the small bedrooms. I'm gonna go here, share the screen quickly. So going back to the plans here. So yes, there's no built-in closets, and I know that's very European of me of not doing that. But we're building a whole storage wall here right now. That is the same millwork that has actually helped us with that table is working on this. So that was something that was already in the plans, not shown in this plan, and then likewise. Up here, we're doing actually overhead over the head of like 2 columns and then an overhead storage for this room. This is really more of a guest room, and this is our master room, and this is the kids' bedroom. So in here we just have a dresser, and that's enough for now, at least. But yeah, this house might be too small in a few years. Who knows? And then I'm gonna have to think of something else. But yeah, probably something else to add to that list of lesson learned. Even though the millwork is going to look great and much, and I guess nicer than the built-in closets that are standard, it's more expensive. And for the past year, I haven't had a closet because I haven't been able to find somebody to build it for me. So yeah, there's definitely an advantage in doing a built-in closet.
Okay, the other thing that I noticed that you're pushing beds against the wall in your little study there. It's another very European approach, not to put it into the middle of the room and having, nightstands left and right.
Yes, well, the house, I haven't talked too much about that, but there's always also an aspect of light and views that is really important. So of course, this is the main view looking out this way. As you enter the house, you have this window that faces the pond, so you have this direct connection of what expects you, even though you're in a smaller space, and that then opens up to this big one. In here, there's not a direct connection to the exterior when you enter, but when you're in bed, you have this frame view of the exterior that way, and it's really nice being in bed and just looking outside of the window. In this case here, the bed is under there because this is a low roof. It's a pitch roof, right? So there's still it's 3'6", so it's enough for the bed to go against the wall. And in here you get actually some nice light in the morning facing east. None of the bedroom. I mean, one thing that I also that is different from Italy. So if anybody has ever been to Italy, you know that there's shutters on the windows everywhere, whether they're roll up or those wooden ones outside. So growing up in Italy, I used to just close the shutters and you just sleep, and it's dark. And whether you wake up at 11 in the morning or 6 in the morning is still dark. So I intentionally didn't create too much light. It's basically the bare minimum on the bedrooms in order to improve the comfort and the ability to sleep. So it's kind of an intentional move, in like there's a relatively small. I mean, it's a 4x4 window, so it's enough for light and air, but this is not super bright bedroom, and nor it's a big one. The idea is that you go in there to sleep, and then you spend your time in the open space where there's a light and air and things to do. Likewise with this room, and also for the master bedroom, honestly.
Thanks. Nice project.
Yeah, that's a good point too. When you're looking at glazing cost, you can tell you spent the big money where you really want the light, and you took out the that cost from the room. So great insight on that. Mr. Scott Kennedy, you got a question?
I don't think it's so much a question. It is this whole question on the ventilation of the kitchen exhaust. And I do know that there's a wonderful unit being manufactured here in Vancouver, but I mean, it's talking about north of $2,000 for it. So it's not going to be very easy to get it into a lot of projects. I'm building a little duplex. I'm hoping to build a little duplex for my sons, and really small. But it is that question of how do we ventilate the kitchen, and they both like to cook. So I do have a concern with however we do this. So wondering what you said you would go to an exhaust fan next time around. Is it because you're not capturing with this hood, or is it because the hood's not cleaning it properly?
Well, so I think that there's a few things here. So this is an induction cooktop. So that's already a dramatic improvement over 90% of American houses that have gas, right? So there's no pollution because of combustion, and that's just one great thing out of the box. But then nonetheless, you still have some pollutants when you're cooking, and you have smell. So the solution that I have is I put pretty close to the, if I go back to that slide, actually, pretty close to the range hood, I have the intake for my air. So there you go here. So this is the air intake. So and the booster button for the ERV is right on the kitchen. So basically every time I cook, I know that I need to push that button, and that's gonna extract more air, and that cleans it up. That doesn't remove the smell. If I cook something stinky, say if I'm boiling a cauliflower or cooking a steak or something like that, it still stinks in the room, but it cleans that smell pretty rapidly after I'm done with cooking. The pollutants is another story. Because it cannot be too close. You see this radius. This is the 10 feet. The 5 feet radius from the range hood that this needs to have in order not to. Well, both the supply and the return needs to have that from the range hood, not to unbalance the system. Because of that, it cannot capture everything, especially because you're right on top of that. If you're stirring something, if you're flipping again burgers or so on, you're just breathing those pollutants, and that's when a fan that will or an exhaust that or range hood that will exhaust to the exterior will probably be better. I'm not concerned much about this because again, it's a second home. I'm not cooking here all the time. But yes, for a primary residence, I would definitely consider exhausting.
Yeah, so my secondary home is gas cooking with no range hood. So you're way better than me.
Yes,
it's off
exactly.
grid, so I don't have any power to run one anyway.
Yes.
The question that I had, two questions. How high above the grill have you put your range hood? Because
30 inches.
Because it's the question of capture, and then is it a charcoal filtered range hood?
Yes, it's double charcoal. There's two exhaust on the two sides, so there's charcoal filters, yes, and it's 30 inches from the top of the cooktop. Luckily, both my wife and I are tall, so I wanted to have everything aligned. So that's why it's kind of invisible in there, right? Everything is aligned there. So you can reach the cabinets in here. We have a little step stool for the higher ones, and this is enough clearance to work without any problem. There's lights underneath there, so it's a nice and clean look.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of where my sons want to go as well, only with the window behind the counter. But I'm just trying to think of whether we should get those cabinets a bit lower to help that capture, because I've been talking to the guy who's designing this fancy range hood here in Vancouver, and he's actually designed it so it's got an air curtain that'll come down and actually kind of extends the effect of the hood with a very low air curtain, and he's washing the front with another piece of air, but it's very, very expensive. It's got 3 filters in it: the steel filter, then there's another filter, then there's a carbon filter, and the carbon filter is about 2 inches thick, and it's a beautiful looking thing. And you did say that the steel filter is the most important one because that's what captures the grease, and you need to wash it regularly. Like put it in your. He says you should actually have 2 sets of grills. Put one of them in your dishwasher every week or so and keep it clean all the time. So those are all the pointers that came out from. Kyle clearly knows what he's doing. He normally does hood fans for restaurants and things like that. But I think that would be that to me is a big issue to try to figure out how to do this right.
It is. I know that it's a debate. There's always in every Passive House conference. There's always a presentation dedicated to this topic, and all of the data also that is available. It's based on gas stove, which is a completely different animal. It's just so it's still like something problematic. If you only look at the cost, the solution that I have, because the booster, I would have built it no matter what for the bathrooms. That's basically inexpensive, right? And the range hood, I think is $250, something like that, compared to something that needs probably a preheater for the air supply if it's extracting too much. That needs duct work, then is exhaust to the roof that limits where you can put a window also because you need clearance from that, plus all the work necessary to install it and the cost of the machine. It's easily 10 times more expensive. So at that point, one needs to look at what is the benefit of one versus the other.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great stuff, Scott. Susan, over to you, and then Ratko. 2 more questions in the hopper.
Oh, I'm just typing away questions. I think I get another chance to talk.
Then we'll get to Graham too.
Okay, so yeah, I wanted to know what Aaron Wood's product is called. Does it exist yet, Scott?
It's still in development. I know he's come up with a name, and I made a reminder. Whatever. I need to go see him. And I should have seen him in December. And
next time. Okay.
I've told him we want a presentation on Accelerator as soon as he's get this thing figured out, because it's a pretty impressive unit.
Well, it's always an issue that comes up, right, over and over. And so then I'm having this side discussion with Graham. I'm like, because so then you puncture a hole in the wall, and so you have this special damper that hope is airtight, and that triggers when you But I mean, isn't that compromising your air tightness is what I was asking.
Maybe Graham can come on because I know he's done this a couple times. The ones that I've seen, the best ones I've seen people literally go to Germany, buy it, and bring it in their suitcase home. The ones I've seen here in Vancouver, I know Leighton Williams, who's usually on, he installed one that he did get to passive house levels of air tightness with it installed. And we can bug him next time he's on about how that's working out. But ideally, it's a mechanical damper that, again, is closed, is airtight enough to deal with passive house levels of air tightness. And when he turns on the hood fan, it opens up.
I see Graham nodding his head. Go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, that's what we've done that a few times with mixed results. But yeah, motorized dampers on intake and exhaust. We also have the advantage of not a super cold climate, so we don't have to worry about preheating the air, the air balancing. But it also depends on where you reintroduce it. But I think that may be the simplest approach overall, because that $2,000 vent hood that you have to clean all the time and all, I mean, I don't know, it just sounds like moving the mountain to Muhammad to me at a certain point. So I think you probably accept less than ideal air cleaning, or you vent to the outside and focus on getting those things to seal.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying in Germany they have tighter, as like Sean, you were saying they had units that worked better?
Well, again, it just comes down like they're probably triple seal versus the one we get here is maybe double or single seal. So that's the difference. I just remember one of our Accelerator events that someone, went to Germany on their trip to see family, and on the way home they bought one because they couldn't find one here. So.
Thanks.
We'll come back to the second. Sorry, Graham, maybe I'll bump you in front of Radko. Did you have another question or comment?
I do. Well, a couple comments and a question. First, my comments, this is just an amazing project, like incredibly well designed. I love it. And I love how clearly thought through and executed it was. And I think maybe part of the dryness may be, and this happens with small passive houses where the ventilation rate is driven far more by the fact that you have 2 bathrooms and a laundry room and all that stuff. So your average air change rate is probably really high. It tends to be like that in smaller houses, just because you have two bathrooms in a small house versus 2 bathrooms in a big house. You got a lot more average air change, and when you're turning over a lot of air like that, it tends to dry the house. My question was around those angled windows. Like I love the little wing window, I guess, in your kid's bedroom.
Yes.
This is more like just in terms of logistics and getting that in there. Was there some tension around getting that to be exactly the right size or getting it to fit?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, because that's it's just a perfect installation. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, the builders really kudos to the builders. They did a great job installing this, and again, even though the company is not there any longer, there's the foreman, Seamus McCanns, he started a new company, and we're working with him on a bunch of projects because of the experience in passive house and the workmanship. So really thankful for their work, because they did an amazing job installing this. So this window here, and actually the window on the balcony here, these are all actual curtain wall systems. So they're all the same stick built. So just came with the frame assembled together and then glazed in place. Well, this is pretty straightforward, just a simple door with the glass on the sides, and well, this of course had some big glass to install. The little window had the challenge for the operable window. So there's a window here that required to have a certain dimension because of fire egress code. So making it open entirely, we actually had a problem when you try to open it because the window is that thick. The aluminum cap of the wood frame will actually hit the frame on the interior side of it. It's kind of hard to explain, but when you open it up, in the upper corner here will actually, even though the hinges are on that side, that corner will basically hit the aluminum will hit the wood behind. So not a very nice solution, but what we had to do was basically carve out a little bit of the frame and notch it in there so that we can actually open that window fully. Luckily, the gasket's still engaged above that notch. It's just not that nice. If you know it's there, you open the window and you see it, something hurts in me, but otherwise it's not something that anybody will ever notice, and it was a pretty simple solution.
Thanks, Graham. Does that work?
And thank you for your comments on the project. Appreciate that. We spent a lot of time on details.
Yeah,
I think we can all again agree, all of us, this is amazing. And again, my final question is about your builder architect experience, but we got a couple more in the queue here. So over to Ratko. Ratko, are you still with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, good. Sorry.
Hello, Alessandro, and congratulations on a wonderful looking project. You seem to have no internal curtains at the large window of the living area, so I think that your adjustable external shading is important. But my question is, how often are you changing your HRV filters, and how affected by cooking fumes are those filters?
So the filters, I just follow the indication from Xender. So Xender has an app that tells you when to replace those filters. Again, because this is a second home, it's not that even though it recommends every 6 months, I mean, I'm doing it every 6 months right now, but it's not that pressing because of the distance that I showed earlier. Oops, the other way. Because of the distance between the actual ERV intake here and the range hood, the greasy smoke doesn't really get there. Not that much. It's most of that is filtered with the carbon filters in the range hood itself. So I've never really noticed that. And I have one of those cone shaped pre-filter on the intake. If you've ever seen a Xender system, you know what I'm talking about. It's like a little hat that goes. It's like a mesh system, and that captures dust and things like that. And I change those pretty frequently, also because every time we do some work and maybe cutting some wood or something like that inside the house for mill work or things like that, they get clogged with sawdust. I have never felt anything oily on those, honestly. It's just the carbon filter that catches that. So I haven't seen any problem, but there is a pre-filter on top of the filter.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, great question. And Barb, thanks for some of those links and comments. I got some reading material to do on the side here. Next, sorry, I got distracted by trying to find an article for Joshua and reading chat here. Last one I think we have is, oh, that's me. One question, we were talking about the exhaust and being around the hood fan 5 feet away. Would it help to have another exhaust on the other side where you've got, where it's outside of that 5 foot circle, kind of closer to the, entrance, which might look weird in your ceiling when you're walking through, but do you think that would help? Or as Graham would say, would it be better to just go with a vented hood fan and just put a mechanical damper on the outside?
I think like the biggest problem for me, and honestly, I don't know if I've ever cooked on a or like cooked like something like say making a soup or cooking a pasta, something that creates a lot of humidity. My biggest problem is that rather than the smell or the greasy oil or anything like that, because that condensates immediately on the underside of the cabinet, and then I have to even open it and dry the interior of the doors. And I don't even know if that, honestly, maybe someone else on this call knows that an answer to this question. I don't know if an exterior ventilating fan will solve that problem, will capture all that vapor and bring it out before it condensates on the cabinetry. The smell or the grease is definitely not a problem. I've never like when you cook with gas, everything in the kitchen gets that sticky crap on top of it, right? Never experienced that. There's nothing sticking in the kitchen. Of course, around there's a little bit of splatter of oil, but that's it. But there's nothing volatile that goes around the space. The smell is actually clear pretty quickly. So again, you cook something, within an hour, the smell is gone if you remember to use the booster. It's really the vapor for me the biggest issue. The pollutants, of course, is also something, and I show that those numbers, but they're really like a peak that lasts a few minutes and then it goes down. So if that will solve the problem of the vapor, then I will consider something like that. But I don't know what will help with that.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, great stuff. Yeah, I mean, I have the Aware, and it's fascinating the data that it gives you. And again, we have a gas cooktop, and yeah, I get alarms all the time with my family not putting on the hood fan, and I call home and be like, guys, you're hurting yourselves. Open a window or turn the hood fan on. Do something. But it's impressive how quickly that thing, and even from a distance, it's like 20 feet in my office, and doesn't do much before it signals that the air quality is not as good as it should be. I think the last question, if anyone else want to raise your hand if I missed it, but I think we got everybody, is just the whole experience of being an architect and then thrown into the builder world. So did you have to tell yourself many a time of, oh yeah, don't penetrate the air barrier? What are some of those kind of details and concepts that you might have had to tell your crew that maybe not as experienced, to just ensure that they didn't hurt the passive house principles as you're working through this?
Yes and no. Because of the rain screen system, there was not really that problem, and because as I mentioned, I mean, the Solitex is definitely something easy to poke through if you're not careful. But for the most part, actually, the wood siding was on areas that were like stick built more than prefab, so there wasn't that risk. And the rain screen system puts you 1.5 inches. I use 1.25 inches fastener at an angle, so it's really impossible to hit that with those fasteners. So there wasn't I wasn't worried about that. I never really had that risk. And all the friends that helped me either studied architecture or practicing architecture or something related to that. So they were, for the most part at least, and a couple of designers also. But they were aware of some of the challenges of the house. They were interested in that. So it was a learning experience for everybody in doing some things, enjoying the work, and trying to do a good job also. Yeah, it was I mean, in hindsight, especially, it was a great learning experience. While doing it and sweating and not having water hooked up or things like that, that was stressful. But again, learned so much, and yeah, part of it at least I would recommend it to every architect to learn in the field by doing.
Well, again, the details look great. So maybe again, the pictures, we don't get to see the fine details of the work, but from the ones you posed, it looks great. Somebody just asked about another indoor air quality monitor, and I can't name it. I think there's another one called RNet 4 that's more portable. If anyone recalls that name, can you throw it in the chat for Scott? I quite enjoy the Aware. Again, the one thing that I've learned, and I think I've said this many times on the show, is When I'm in my office through all the Zoom meetings, after about an hour, I'm like, oh, I'm tired, and I start yawning. And I look over at the thing, and the CO2 is above the limit. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't need a coffee. I just need to open up the window or open up the door. So it's fascinating about with that data, what it can be there. All right. Well, sir, thank you for showing your amazing home. I wish you and Daniel the best of luck. Can't wait for you to come back to talk about some of your next projects. Thanks, Zach, for putting the Aranet 4. That's great. I want to get one of those too, just so I can put it on in the car and do different things that I can't do with the Aware. It's just great to get data of our air quality for all the different things. It's great stuff.
Yes.
So we'll let you go. I might stick around for a few more minutes if anyone wants to just chat about other cool projects or good things are going on. Graham, you got your hand up? Go for it.
Yeah, quick question. The curtain wall and the exterior doors, were they from the same vendor as the windows? Yeah.
Yes. The curtain wall and so I show some details here. This was all done by Batimet, but really what it is, and it's the same. Pretty confident it's the same for Zola. Has exactly the same system. Icon, Neufer, all the usual brands have basically the same thing. What it is, it's milled by a local mill worker, wood mullion, and then all the aluminum hardware is bought from Schuko. So it's all standard extrusion from Schuko, and you will see exactly the same detail of this one if you look for the same system from Icon or Zola, etc. It's the same. There's a couple of different pressure caps, beauty caps that you can put in there. There's even an option of structurally glazing this, but yeah. So good luck finding somebody able to structurally glaze it in upstate New York. So this was the system that we use.
Yeah, beautiful windows, great stuff. So yeah, don't forget to save the chat. There's some definitely good info that Barb and others have put in there regarding links. So the 3 dots just by your name, you can just click on that and save the chat, and you can follow along afterwards. I know I've got to follow up on a few things that are put in there, which is great. Otherwise, I think, again, we'll let you go. I wanted to bring up a kind of question to the group. It's a bit of an interesting hack with tying in HRVs to a Bream heat pump, where in the wintertime when you've got the Bream dumping cool air in your system, how you could tap it into your ERV to help out either with cooling or heating. If anyone's thought about that bit of a hack of tying in your HRV or ERV to the exhaust of your on-demand hot water, or not on-demand, sorry, your Bream heat pump system, because you have that heat pump in your mechanical room and it's dumping heat or cooling. And has anyone thought about tapping it in your passive house projects?
It's very different airflow rates generally.
That's what we thought, but I wanted to, again, someone else brought up to me, and I wanted to talk about it with our group here, because it's an interesting insight of that process. I know a lot of times we're talking about putting the Bream on one side of the wall and your IT tech equipment on the other side of the wall, and so you can dump heating and cooling back and forth between that space, because the IT is creating so much heat, and so you can flush it out that way. But when we're lower in those spaces, can we reuse some of that heating or cooling? So just thought I'd throw it out to some of the smart people that are here tonight.
Well, Sean, it just reminds me of God, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago now. I feel like everything is 4 or 5 years ago now. In Portland, there was a passive house that sand and CO2 hot water. They had a trial or something that they were heating the hot water but cooling the cooking space. They were heating the hot water for, just from the heat pump. So I mean, there's got to be a way of using that, cooled space to supplement other spaces somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're only talking a few degrees like Celsius, be a bit more Fahrenheit, but just a question of, using that a little bit, even just, just to supplement when we're, dealing with those fractions. So, but yeah, Graham, I think I always got to pose it to you because I think looking at the group here, I think you've done more passive house projects than most people. And since you teach this, I figured, you might know some of these little bit of hacks when we're getting into the nitty bitty and grueling of like, oh, can we do our, like even with the sand, and what's interesting too, or even maybe a Mitsubishi, when you got the heat pump on the outside, can you put your supply or exhaust kind of near the heat pump so you're dumping it out to there, and you might be picking up a few degrees difference when you're, if you're close to the heat pumps?
Maybe, but again, like the thing is that if you look at the amount of energy that you're putting into the water heater, into the water tank, it's generally so much more than either the cooling or the heating of your building, especially if it's a passive house. They're like way out of whack. So it's not near a 1-for-1 type connection. So I don't, and yeah, some of the stuff gets hard to figure out exactly how it's going to work, but it's kind of a very imbalanced load.
Fair enough. Like again, when you've dialed in a passive, so you're looking for ways to tweak. This was a conversation I had, so
yeah, it's like if you want to heat your water tank with the heat in your house, you're going to cool your house off a whole lot more, many more degrees than you'll heat the water, or converse.
And then you get the problems too, where then you affect the efficiency of the device because of those loads too. So you thought you outsmart things, then you cause another problem. So fair enough.
What about putting like air source heat pumps in common spaces? So like I'm thinking a multi-family building. Is that ever thought or done?
Well, I think there's just the space issue of just, space and aesthetics is from my understanding of those.
Well, I guess what I was thinking of this is if you carve out a closet, I mean, you need the space for these things, right? So you got to put them somewhere, and they need a lot of air just so they operate correctly, 1,000 cubic feet or something like that. So, common space, hallways, if the temperature fluctuates more or less there, then it's not so much of an issue as a living space. So I'm just thinking if others have what their viewpoint is on that kind of strategy.
Jeff, I mean, the only thing that I can say from, when we're dealing with multifamily again, like especially in Vancouver, where the price of square foot is so expensive that kind of logic, oh, hey, that might make sense from a functional standpoint, from a development cost, construction cost, it just gets thrown out. But
well, I mean, I guess the alternative is putting the air source heat pump in the living space.
Yeah.
So you're still losing the square footage. It's just where do you get your air from? From the living space or from a, like a hallway?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to be a hog, so I'm letting anyone else want to chime in if they have a thought about that. All right, Jeff, you stumped us tonight.
No, I just asked the question too late.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I know I've had a long day, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not even processing the question. I can't even answer it. So that's what happens when it's a full day of teaching.
Yeah, well, Dan recommended something or suggested a solution for the brewery is living above. We're doing something similar where we're using the domestic hot water heat pump to kind of like condition a room that is dedicated to it's basically a pantry and wine cellar, so that so far it seems like that helps with that, keeping the space dry in all seasons. In the summertime, we haven't yet. We'll test it and we'll let you know next presentation what happens in the summertime, if all the wine goes to waste or not.
Well, if it does, then we'll just all come and make past.
Yeah, I'm not gonna show my face.
Yeah, exactly.
May I add a comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
So being one of the older people here, when I was in high school, I worked for the electrical testing laboratories, which is now only goes by the initials ETL. It's like they tested all kinds of electrical equipment or other equipment like seatbelt mounts when they were first using seatbelts in vehicles. They were the ones to test them. It really killed me every time I went to work to see a Porsche with fewer pieces of it there. But what they did in running tests of air conditioning units and heating units, they had them all in the basement and they had isolated rooms so that the heat from one test was always used to reduce any demands for the next test. And this was in the middle of New York City. So they had the chief engineer had an old digital, an analog gauge right on his desk, because when Con Ed would lower the voltage during the summer outages, they knew when they had to stop their tests. But it was, I always think about that when we look at things we're doing today in Passive House. That engineer who I knew probably died 40 years ago, but it was pretty amazing to see what went on.
Dan, it's something that I'm going to bring up next week when we talk about the embodied carbon. Mark Bernhardt, who's a passivist builder in Vancouver Island, just talks about, when it comes to a lot of these things have already been invented. We just forgot about it. Somehow in the 60s and 70s, we had too much fun in chemistry class. And now we're just going back to tweak Mother Nature and go back to some of these ideas we had that were really good. And somehow we've now overcomplicated to the point where they just, cost too much, or we're dealing with, just some other design features. So appreciate your insights, my friend. All right, everybody. I think we should wrap it up. Again, next week is a big week. Hopefully you had a chance to read Mary Jane's magazine. I know the team worked really hard to put that out. I've only got about halfway through it, so I've got some homework tonight and for the weekend as well. And again, there's another good podcast out. So can't keep up to all the work that Michael and Zach and the podcast team do. And again, Zach, congratulations getting over 100,000 downloads. That's a great feat.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting.
So again, everyone, mark your calendars for February. That Wednesday will be the kind of main show, the Passive House Live, where again, we still will keep our roots of the happy hour fun, keep showcasing these amazing projects and making sure we bring in some construction tech. So just gonna keep at it. More effort in one night. That's what we're gonna give you. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good week. Like everything else. Actually, Thursdays are quiet now because the BS and Beer show is only going to be coming on once a month. If you still want to catch Mark and Dave from BS Friday, they were going to try to talk about the SIGA tour, and unfortunately lasted about a day before they had to cancel it due to COVID.
Oh, bummer.
I'm sure there's some good insights from the SIGA tour that Dave and Mark will talk about. And then we're back at it next week, and it's a full week of events. So take care, everybody.